It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
Well, hello there. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. I am so delighted you could join me. It is late in the year 2022, and you still have a few weeks to do something called tax loss harvesting. Maybe you've heard this, maybe you know all about this, but just a quick little recap for those who may not know. Tax loss harvesting is a investment idea, a tax strategy. That's what it is. It's a tax strategy where if you have some things that are down considerably in the calendar year, in this year 2022, of course, if you're listening to this in 2025, you might be able to do the same thing. No, I'm not actually predicting that the market is down in 2025. I'm just saying this works for any year. But if you have some investments that you've desired to get rid of at this time, maybe now is the time to sell them while they're down so that you have losses to offset gains in other places. The reason you might want to do that is you might want to do what's known as a rebalance. Generally speaking, for me and the Polaris plan, rebalancing often involves selling things that are up the most and moving some of that money to places that aren't up the most, that are down the most, down considerably, to rebalance. That is something that I'm currently doing with the vast majority of my clients. I'm hoping to have that done before the end of the calendar year. If you are a client and you haven't heard from me in the last couple of weeks, give me a call, send me an email. The email, of course, is phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. I'd be happy to set up a time or to review your plan, but my intention is to have this all done before the end of the year anyway. But you can do that yourself. You can make adjustments. You can rebalance. For most people, doing this once a year is sufficient. One thing that you can look at, by the way, is that if you are close to retirement or in retirement and you want to sell things that have lost the least, and that's probably going to be the large cap, mid cap, small cap value index funds out of all the things that I use and recommend. And of course, you can go back a couple of months and hear the whole Polaris plan explained over 6 episodes. Those are the things that are up the most that you can trim from, and maybe in late January, early February, I'll do another example. I did one a few weeks ago and everyone seemed to like it, so that's cool. But I can do one of those, but just an idea for you. And of course, when you're reducing the things that went up the most or went down the least, if you've owned them for a while, you might have tax consequences. So one thing you can do is look for all of the individual lots. So if you own VVIAX, which is Vanguard's large cap value index fund, you might have made purchases of different dollar amounts and different quantities at different times over the years. If you're going to sell from that position, you probably want the ones that you've paid the highest price for, the ones that have made the least amount of money, to reduce your position and put it somewhere else. If you have a generous portion of your portfolio in a 401k or an IRA or a Roth IRA, 403b, any kind of tax qualified, tax sheltered kind of position, you can do that without tax consequences. And that's pretty cool. If the bulk of your money is in an individual account, a brokerage account, a taxable account, a joint tenants account, or other kinds of accounts where you pay taxes, be careful, be a little more prudent in what you sell, understand the cost basis of what you own, and realize that you may have to pay some taxes for doing that. This year, there is a possibility that if you're closer in retirement, you might have some bonds that you could also sell because bonds are down. So look at your bonds, because if you're in retirement or close to retirement, you might soon need cash out of your portfolio over the next year or two. You could preemptively sell some of the bonds and have a loss that is there that offsets the gain in the things that have gone up. So it's just a possibility. Consult with your own tax professional, or at least talk to your financial advisor if that financial advisor is Phil or whoever it might be. Later in the show, we have our interview with Helaine Olen, and she has written a couple of books on investments and index funds, and we're going to talk to her about market conditions and the economy and Trump and just all kinds of fun stuff. I also have a quick little segment to discuss the price of Tesla stock. And again, even though I'm pretty sure I said it during the segment, I want to make sure people understand the difference. I might think that Tesla cars are okay or even good. Probably not great. I'm not going to kid anybody. But it doesn't mean that the stock's not wickedly overpriced. I'm talking about the value or the price of the stock in the segment, not whether a Tesla car is a good thing to buy or not. I'm talking about whether Tesla stock is a good thing to buy or not, and what it's worth, and why, oh why, has it lost 50%, more than 50% of its value in the last 12 months. And of course, I can't have a fun show without a crypto rant because of the things that are going on in the world today. And that will be after the introductory segment. So I'm not going to spoil all that, but things aren't good in the crypto world, boys and girls. Get the hell out. There's my short answer for you. So we're going to wrap up with a quick little intro break in here, and then we'll talk about some fun stuff going on in the world of investments and politics and maybe even some religion. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, poor! You don't have to be poor anymore! Jesus is here!
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
I want to take a moment and talk about Tesla stock just for laughs. Just see if I can annoy some more people. Elon, of course, is over destroying Twitter and yanking engineers from other companies that he has to try to fix it, save it, unfuck it. I don't know what's going to happen. I have a pretty good idea. I think Tesla's going to go down the toilet. Not Tesla. Sorry. Freudian slip, maybe? I don't know. Twitter is going to go down the toilet. Tesla, I'm not that worried about. What I am worried about with Tesla, and what I have talked about in the past in one of the rare exceptions that I make where I talked about a specific stock, because I don't really do stocks like individual stocks. I do index funds, and in the United States, broken up into 6 segments. You've heard me talk about it in other places, so I'm not going to bore you here. But a couple of years ago, just a little bit over a year ago, Tesla stock was $1,200 a share. Now, they've since done, I think, a reverse 3-for-1 split, because now when I look at the graph of the price chart, historical price, the absolute peak is $407 a share. So I think that's a 3-for-1 reverse split. Not crazy thing to do in the world, because you want your stock to be a little bit more affordable per share to make it easier for people to, buy a share or two. So that's pretty common. But I had talked about in the past that, in my opinion, Tesla was priced to sell about half of all the cars in the world at some point in the future, maybe like 10 years. And when I would talk to a Tesla fanboy, they would say, well, I think that's going to happen. I think that Tesla is going to sell half of all the electric cars in the future, of all cars, right? Because at one point, Tesla was valued more than every other car manufacturer put together, which would mean they'd have to sell at least half of all the cars for that valuation to be appropriate. And I just kind of threw it out there. Hey, this looks kind of expensive to me. Not something I would be interested in. Well, today, not 407. The price is below 170. I don't know exactly when this goes into a show, so it might be higher at the listening. But the problem is that in the last, year to date, as of this recording, it's down 58%. And that's a pretty big loss. So, I mean, if you bought it 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, you could still be up considerably. But when was it really below this? You have to go back all the way into the 2020, early mid 2020. Anything after that, you've pretty much lost money. So for the last 2.5 years, you're down. If you bought it near the peak of 400 or 320 or 360 or 380 or whatever, it's now 170. You've lost a lot of money. I tried in a neutral manner, just stating the facts on a Facebook post. And one of the things that caught my attention is someone said, well, now that it's down 56%, it is now kind of in parity with other people in the industry, other car manufacturers. And of course, there will be people that say, Tesla's not a car manufacturer. Okay, whatever. Live in the fantasy world you want to live in. If you think that that's true, that Tesla is not a car manufacturer, that they are a quote unquote software company or a conglomerate because of solar panels or SpaceX or whatever, fine. I'm not gonna get through to you. I am also not predicting that Tesla stock will go down or will go up from this point. I raised a concern when it was 400, aka 1200, but now 400 a year plus ago. I don't have any thoughts on whether it's going to go up or down for here. But what I did want to address was this idea that its price is now like other people in the industry. If you meant that industry to be auto manufacturers, you are mistaken. So there are different ways you can look at a company and figure out what its stock might be worth. You could look at the value of their patents, the inventory that they have on hand, the buildings, the property, the factories, their patents, ideas, all kinds of things that you can do. One of them is to look at earnings. And it was interesting because for several years, virtually any and all positive earnings Tesla had was because of tax credits that they were selling in other countries around the world. Well, good for them. That's what kind of the reason tax credits existed, to create this incentive for someone to get in the market early and make a bunch of money on tax credits that were paid for, penalties that were paid for by other auto manufacturers that weren't doing what Tesla was doing. Good for Tesla. Absolutely excited about that. Now that at least in Europe, those tax credits are fading or not as valuable because other manufacturers, Volkswagen as an example, now sells a lot, in Europe at least, a lot of electric cars. So recently Tesla, like several other car manufacturers, raised their prices, and now they're making pretty darn good money per car being sold. And again, good for them. But their earnings per share right now is about $1, which is the most amount per share, and it's the highest percentage I think that they've had ever. So pretty good profitability, but the price is still kind of out of line when you compare it to 12-month earnings. And I do trailing 12-month earnings because we have those as actual numbers. If you want to look at future earnings, the first thing you have to do is make up, guess, estimate, calculate what the future earnings are going to be. I'm not really into doing that at this time. Someone can do it. And if you think Tesla stock is still a bargain or is a bargain now, fine, go buy it, whatever. Like I said, it's not really something I do. But based on 12-month trailing earnings, the earnings per share, which is one of many methods one can use to value a company, historically in the S&P 500, price earnings ratio, the price divided by the earnings per share, is historically considered to be really good buying opportunity if it's below 10 or 12. And stocks as a whole might be considered kind of pricey above 18 or 20 or 25, depending on the economy and interest rates and things like that. I looked at half a dozen, maybe even a whole dozen different car manufacturers around the world, and their price to earnings ratio at this time anywhere from 4 to almost 10. So that's kind of the ballpark. For car manufacturers, they don't historically have huge profit margins. They're not huge growth industries. And maybe you could argue that Tesla is. Fine, fair enough. But the current price earnings ratio of Tesla is in the 50s. So every other car manufacturer is in the single digits, all below 10. The S&P 500 is considered fairly to highly priced, often in the late teens or around 20. People get kind of spooked when it's in the mid 20s. But here is a company that's in the 50s. So just as a reference point, based on that reference point, you can put no value in it if you so choose. But on the past 12 months price earnings ratio for Tesla's in the 50s, where most other car manufacturers are between 4 and 9, maybe average 6 or 7, based on that. And only that, Tesla stock might be overpriced 5 to 10 times. I don't know. I mean, you are the ultimate decider if you're buying individual stocks. But I would ask that you do not say things like the price of Tesla stock is now in the same ballpark or equivalent with other auto manufacturers. That is not the case, at least not when you look at it on that measuring stick. If you use a different measuring stick, okay, so be it. But on price earnings ratio, they are not. I don't know, just popped to my head. Thought I'd share that with you. Enjoy.
What did this person who made this world intend it for? And this is the point where you think, well, it fits me very well. You know, the caves and the forests and the stream and the mammoths. He must have made it for me. I mean, there's no other conclusion you can come to. And it's rather like a puddle waking up one morning. I know they don't normally do this, but allow me, I'm a science fiction writer. A puddle wakes up one morning and thinks, this is a very interesting world I find myself in. It fits me very neatly. In fact, it fits me so neatly, I mean, really precise, isn't it? It must have been made to have me in it. And the sun rises, and he's continuing to narrate the story about this hole being made to have him in it. And the sun rises, and gradually the puddle is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And by the time the puddle ceases to exist, it's still thinking, it's still trapped in this idea that the hole was there for it. And if we think the world is here for us, we will continue to destroy it in the way that we've been destroying it.
Pace e lunga vita.
Lunga vita e prosperità.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. All right, everybody, with me as promised, I am so excited, a return guest, Helaine Olen. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I am well. And of course, listeners, she is the author of 2 fun books, at least fun books that appeal to this audience specifically. The Index Card, Why Personal Finance Doesn't Have to Be Complicated, and Pound Foolish, exposing the dark side of the personal finance industry. And you've been on before, and we have great fun trying to expose the funny stuff that's going out there. What's new in your world?
Oh, I wrote a piece last week on the Great Resignation.
Yes.
And I had a piece on the why Americans shouldn't fall for the myth of the billionaire genius.
Well, before we get to the billionaire genius, where is the other piece? Where can they find it?
At the Washington Post opinion page. If you just look under my name, you will it will come right up.
Excellent. That would be probably a whole episode on its own. And you did tease me a little bit. We can tease the listeners. I think that's what you said. You're working on a piece about what topic?
Medicare Advantage.
Oh my God. I so many times I get questions about this, and now I don't want to get too much into it because you're not done. But Medicare Advantage are these endless, well, they're paying for this endless advertising where they're talking about call up and check your zip code. You may be due money, right? That's what this is?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
no, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. Medicare Advantage is the one where you are, you're due money. So yes, that is it. But it's basically an alternative form of insurance for people over the age of 65 that, it's sort of an alternative to Medicare that pitches itself as better than Medicare, but it's actually quite questionable whether it's better or not. In fact, it could be argued that for the federal government, costs more money, and for patients, it offers worse care than Medicare, especially when people are ill.
And that going to be in the?
And that's the extent of the tease.
Yeah, that's going to be in the Washington Post soon.
That should be in the Washington Post.
Okay, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in my opinion, it's not magic. If your costs go down, it has to come from somewhere, especially when you've put an entire new company in the mix. But we'll find out more details on your piece. The one thing I do want to focus on a little bit is you wrote a nice story in the Washington Post again, opinion piece. Let's see, here's the title. Let's put the myth of the billionaire genius to rest. And you talked about a few of my favorite people. And one is this guy that ran, FTX, the exchange?
FTX. Yes, Sam Bankman-Fried, the multi-billionaire, turned out, I mean, it's hard to say total fraud, but it's sure looking increasingly likely that a lot of this money never really existed. And what money existed was money that actually belonged to his customers that he was using to trade with.
Yeah.
And went poof because he isn't such a genius, and the
apparently not
didn't turn out as well as hoped because crypto's been on a downward slide.
I am a long antagonist, proponent, no, not proponent, whatever. I think the whole thing is a giant Ponzi scheme, and I've talked about it many times, and I upset so many cryptocurrency aficionados with my opinions, but we'll see. We'll see in the future what works out. But FTX was clearly a problem. The wonderkin, as you point out, the boy genius with his curly hair, the money went poof. What?
The money went poof.
What the hell happened? Where'd it go?
And that's a good question.
Yeah.
And as I said, it seems like he was trading it, but it seems like some of it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And the really crazy part of the story is that, there was venture money pouring in, private equity money pouring in, Sequoia was invested. And the quality control here, I mean, was almost comic. The board consisted of friends who and people who worked at FTX.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like these investors performed much in the way of due diligence, because if they did, they might have figured this out.
They couldn't have.
They admitted Sam Bankman-Fried was playing, I think it was Game of Thrones or something like that, He was playing some video game anyway, while he was like talking to them for the pitch meeting. As I like to say, if a woman had done that, except, she was scanning Poshmark while, pitching investors, believe me, nobody would have given her 10 cents. But of course, he was, hailed as a genius. He walked around in rumpled, clothing, shorts and sneakers pretty much. And, he basically, like Elizabeth Holmes in a way,
Oh my
played
God.
a role.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, and people fell for it, and I think some of this is my just gut sense, is you had a lot of people who were middle-aged who felt like they were missing out on something.
Yeah.
And this crypto thing, which I more or less agree with you. I would say it was more an accidental Ponzi scheme than a deliberate one, but nonetheless,
Well, to start with,
Ponzi scheme.
To start with, I'll go with that, but it's not now.
I think there was this this massive fear of missing out that sort of combined with this middle-aged thing. Believe me, I can identify. I don't totally understand this, but this is what the young guys are doing, and it seems like the new thing, and I need to get in on this. And as a result, nobody did much due diligence. I would say it also combined with the fact we've lived in this low interest rate environment for a decade that went to effectively zero at points. And then it combined with all the Fed money coming in during the pandemic lockdowns that just started sloshing around like crazy, and had to go somewhere, and just went, instead of like, say, building a bridge or fixing our decrepit rail system in this country, we went to, hey, let's put it in crypto, because, hey, it's the United States, and we're all geniuses, and this is who runs the joint. And the end result is the money's gone. If the money appears to be fully gone, I mean, the malfeasance on top of malfeasance is extraordinary.
Yes.
The woman running the hedge fund was tweeting about amphetamines. You're like, what? Like, who gives these people money?
And I think when she started the job, she was like 24 and had no experience whatsoever.
Right.
And you're like,
right.
Oh, we're going to hire this 24-year-old to manage billions of dollars. And of course, you said no woman would ever be given that kind of money. Well, here she is.
Right, but he gave it to her.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Right? And by the way, 10 rules of office romance appear to have been broken here too, by the way. But I don't want to get crude and gross about what was going on.
Yeah.
But if you Google sex tape, everybody, there's stuff apparently out there or rumored to be out there. I have not checked myself. I've got my limits as to what I want to know about this scandal.
Yeah.
But
well,
one hears things.
It's funny. You've wandered into my my new joke that I had on Facebook was that Twitter, which is another one of these topics we can get into with Elon, Twitter used to have what was probably the most reliable verification mark that you could get anywhere on the internet, and now it's completely worthless. And the only thing that I can think of that replaces it as being reliable is the verification process at Pornhub. That's really it.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Because
I mean, and I mean that's another thing that's sort of I don't want to say Twitter is blowing up because that's not quite the right word. I think it can go on like this, for a very long time.
I think
Elon Musk wants to lose money.
It's burning to the ground. The $44 billion is gone. It's just gone.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, you only think he must have some plan because you just can't believe that somebody. I mean, whatever you think of Elon Musk or not, and Tesla is a reputable company with a decent product, right? And the whole thing is utterly bizarre, but he does not appear to know what the heck he is doing.
Absolutely
and,
not.
My gut as to what's going on here is, and I would throw in what's going on at Facebook, too, where Zuckerberg is just throwing loads of money at a metaverse that nobody seems to want to inhabit, because there is this thing called the real world, and most of us actually kind of like it. It's one thing to be a couch potato who wants to scan the internet. It's another thing, I think, to reduce your contacts to some virtual reality. And the money is going down the drain there too. And, his first response was to, tell his workers to work harder. And, it's just not going very well.
I get these commercials from Meta about the metaverse where someone is explaining how they made this piece of art, and it looks like something you could make out of Play-Doh, and it's a pudgy face with a big nose that's shaped like the sun or something. And they're like this and other things you can do in the metaverse. Why in the fuck would I want to do that?
Right. If I wanted to do crafts, I'll go to the pottery store down the block, right?
Yeah.
And then you had to say, and that, brings me to one of my ongoing rants about, NFTs and the art of the metaverse.
Yes.
Which is that, art collection as a rule is based around two things: either rich people showing off or money laundering.
Yeah.
And as I like to say, the second it goes virtual online, you've eliminated reason number one. So, what's going on here? And I think that explains a lot of why NFTs ran up and then ran down in value, because there really is no market for it. Because the show-off market isn't interested.
I put on Facebook that I've launched the Phil coin, and I took a picture of a penny and put it up on Facebook and said that this penny is not an actual Phil coin, but it's a physical representation, physical manifestation of the actual Phil coin, which is $20,000 a piece. And then me and my friends just played with it, and someone goes, "Oh, I really like to buy one, but I don't have $20,000." And I said, "Oh, it's infinitely divisible, so you can put in as little as you can." And then a couple of days later, I said, "Oh, the Phil coin is now $22,000, not $20,000, because I bought one from myself." Because a lot of this cryptocurrency stuff and a lot of the NFTs are people buying them back and forth with fictional money and saying, "Look, it's going up." I don't know. So do you think Elon is playing 3D chess and we just don't see it?
I think he thinks he's playing 3D chess. Whether he is or not, I have no clue. I mean, the whole thing is bizarre to the point of I'm not even going to pretend to understand what is going on here. But what I would say all of these things do have in common is you get to this point with wealth where people start, getting surrounded by people who want something from them, which by definition means they tell them what they want to hear, which means they lose the ability over time to actually deal with real criticism and real pushback. And it sort of feeds into this sort of self-referential echo chamber loop where you're not getting particularly good advice. And I think, if I had to guess at what's going on with Twitter, that seems to be some portion of what's going on.
It's also like Trump.
Yeah, it happened with Trump. It happens with it happens with celebrities all the time. I live in Los Angeles. Right?
Yeah.
You can see that, play out over and over again. Who hangs around these people?
I know. I in the past, many years ago, I worked for a company, and I'm not going to say the name, where the owner was like Trump. Everyone on these calls would kiss his ass and say what a genius he was. And there were some times where the business looked like it was going to fail, but he just kept working harder and pulling through because he never fails, at least in his own mind. And it actually worked. So sometimes not being able to accept defeat can work, or you get house on fire kind of defeats because you can't see it.
Right.
And I think that's what Twitter is. I think he is out of his freaking mind, and every other company he's been involved with, he's been there not at the beginning, a la Tesla, but soon, early on, bought his way in, and could control the narrative and control who gets hired. And then he goes to a company that has thousands and thousands of employees and does the same tactics, and they basically give him a unified middle finger and they walk out. And he's like, "But wait, this always worked in the past." I don't know. Did you hear about what he tried to do in Europe?
I would also say there's been this kind of reluctance by a lot of business interests to admit the reality of the labor situation in the United States right now.
Yeah.
So there's this sense of, because there are layoffs, to be fair, that are going on in the Silicon Valley right now.
Yeah.
But there's this idea of the fact, people won't be able to get other jobs, right? This is going to end, right? This is just a temporary blip. Workers are more empowered, but they'll cut it out soon enough. and it doesn't seem to be stopping. So I think when he gave the ultimatum, this is my best guess. I mean, I don't think he intended as many people to leave as ultimately left. I think what happened was he thought X many people would leave, and instead Y many people left.
Yeah.
You know, it's still an undetermined number exactly how many people actually left.
And of course, what right-thinking business owner dares to say, well, maybe we'll just go to bankruptcy?
Right.
And to think that that's something you should say out loud. I don't know. It's like, because in the past, he has said things like, I think Tesla stock is overpriced. And what happens? It goes up even higher because everyone's like, oh, he's just trying to bring down the price so we can buy more shares. Good. I'm with you, Elon. I see what you're selling. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I think he thought he could pull this off and say, well, if you all don't work harder, we'll go bankruptcy. And a lot of people were like, well, you know what? If you're going bankruptcy, I might as well make sure my resume is cleaned up and get the hell out of here while I can.
Right.
I don't know. I think, I don't know. Within a week or two from now, it's going to be close to burnt to the ground. And he's going to lose money, and all the idiots that gave him billions more dollars and all the loans are just going to go poof, just like crypto is going poof.
Yeah, I just do not know. I am not going to say what is going to go on. I tend to think Twitter is going to be around for a lot longer than people think. But what I do think you're going to start seeing is just real glitches pop up. Like, I can tell you now, like, my feed seems to keep showing a lot of the same people over and over again, which is just kind of weird and odd, and same tweets. Like, so something's not, and other people are complaining about the same thing, so something's not quite right there, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're showing, it's a little weird and random how it's going wrong, which is actually kind of a predictable thing, right?
Yeah,
it's not just going to go out in this sort of poof of glory, where the thing's going to blow up on it while we're all watching. It's just this sort of gradual downhill slide of the experience. But what will probably keep it going for a long time, frankly, is that nobody has any other option to get where to go.
Yeah,
I will be honest. I looked at Mastodon and said, I'll stick with Elon Musk and Twitter.
Well, yeah, I have used Twitter to find people, to find authors, because they have a page and stuff. But, so maybe it'll stay as some kind of skeleton of what it used to be. But I don't know. If I can circle back to crypto, what do you think? Is that gonna stick around? Is it gonna be here 20 years from now?
I would hope not. Is I think my answer.
You just don't see the emperor's new suit because you're not smart enough. I think that's what.
I am clearly not in the in the group that thinks this is like some amazing thing, but it's could it last as some odd thing forever? Sure, but would it be worth what it is now? I highly doubt it. It seems like a little bit much to think that could take off that way again, that it's going to go back up, Bitcoin will go back up to what was it at 60,000 at one point or something.
Yeah.
So, it just seems kind of, not believable to me, frankly.
Well, the thing that I just saw a story today about a couple of large domestic U.S. banks that underwrote shares of some new crypto ETFs. And they started selling shares, and the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies started to fall, and they're sitting on tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars of shares in an ETF that they can't unload.
Charming.
I think,
well, that's what I meant, though, about this whole thing, though, with people feeling like they're going to miss out, right?
Yeah.
Like, these are responsible people. They presumably should have known better.
You would
but
think.
They didn't.
When people are chasing easy money, or what they think is easy money, they lose their freaking minds. And it's a common strategy with con men. And I think you're right. I think this started as, I don't know, well-intended Ponzi scheme or accidental Ponzi scheme. But now I think anyone who's in it that doesn't realize it's a Ponzi scheme is just deluded. But, those are my words.
Or it's the mark of it, basically, because the vast majority of crypto appears to be owned by a very small elite group of owners. That's less than 1% of them. I can't swear what the exact number is off the top of my head, but it's a fairly small amount of people.
Yeah, I think the last I saw was 42% was owned by 1/10 of 1% of all users. And for those who first went to Bitcoin because it was going to democratize currency, it's worse than the dollar. It's in literally dozens of people's names. Well, not names, because not only is it more concentrated, we have no idea who really has it. So
Right.
that's wacky. What else are you working on coming up? You got a new book in the works?
Not right now. That's about it. I'm sort of trying to, regroup as the end of the year is approaching and sort of think about what I want to do next, write about next year. And, but still to be determined.
Well,
So.
if I can throw this on you without any warning or notice, we've had fun with all these things that are going wrong, but if someone has some money to invest, what should they do with it? What would be your generic kind of advice?
If I knew the true answer to that, I wouldn't be on this phone call. But I'm still a believer in, investing in, in index funds like the S&P 500. I think you're just never going to outguess everybody else. The fact of the matter is as I always say, you need to be chronically suspicious of anybody who comes to you and says they know the secret, because the next question you got to ask is, why are you telling me this and not Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, or, until a few weeks ago, Sam Bankman-Fried. But it just defies reason that somebody who has this great secret as to how they're going to make money that's in excess of generally, the stock market returns is going to share it with you or me. And I think that's something to always keep in mind. Yeah,
I think that's the hubris of many people, where they're like, I got in on this secret thing that's going to make me a fortune. Really?
Right. Exactly.
Why would the rich person allow you to play in their game? It's a trick. It has to be. Maybe it's not, but you know what? I'll stick to what I know, and the slow and steady. I'm the tortoise in the tortoise and hare fable. Just index funds, stock index, bond index, time. Just takes time, a lot of time. Well, Helaine, excellent. Thank you for being on. If people want to talk to you, is there a place they can contact you, or maybe they want to hire you to come give a talk somewhere?
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Hire me.
Yes.
I can be reached at my email at the Washington Post, which is Helaine.Olen@washpost.com. Or my personal email, Helaine.Olen@gmail.com. Or you can still, as long as it exists, find me on Twitter, where I don't spend quite as much time as I used to, but I still spend too much time there.
Fantastic. And of course, listeners, her two books on this subject, The Index Card and Pound Foolish. I think both of them, it was a team effort. You had other contributors helping you out, but
on the Index Card, I had the great and wonderful Harold Pollack, who teaches at the University of Chicago. Pound Foolish was all me, for better or for worse.
Fair enough. I have read them both over time, and I think they're worth reading. So thank you so much for coming and visiting us here on the Phil Ferguson Show.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
But there was one performance this year that stunned me. It sank its hooks in my heart. Not because it was good. There was nothing good about it. But it was effective, and it did its job. It made its intended audience laugh and show their teeth. It was that moment when the person asking to sit in the most respected seat in our country imitated a disabled reporter, someone he outranked in privilege, power, and the capacity to fight back. It kind of broke my heart when I saw it, and I still can't get it out of my head because it wasn't in a movie. It was real life. And this instinct to humiliate, when it's modeled by someone in the public platform, by someone powerful, it filters down into everybody's life because it kind of gives permission for other people to do the same thing. Disrespect invites disrespect. Violence incites violence. When the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose. Okay, go up with that thing. Okay, this brings me to the press. We need the principled press to hold power to account, to call them on the carpet for every outrage.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. This Investing Skeptically segment is a little bit of a crypto update. Things are not going well in the crypto world, as I predicted, suggested, warned, cautioned. I don't know. The problem with cryptocurrency is it doesn't solve any problem. At least it doesn't solve any legal problems. And there are, of course, thousands upon thousands of cryptocurrencies. And even if someone was right that one of them would win the day, how do you know which one of the thousands and thousands is of value? Last I looked, something like 45% of the entire crypto market is dominated by two, dare I even call them coins, tokens, because they're like tokens you get at a video game parlor. They're not real. Maybe you can have a little fun with them, but when you leave, you better cash them out if possible, because in the outside world, they're going to be meaningless. I mean, they're not necessarily now, but so two cryptocurrencies are almost half, and out of the top six, three of the cryptocurrencies are now stable coins, which means that they try to stay worth $1. So basically, they're a way to move dollars around. We have ways to move dollars around that don't involve cryptocurrency. Zelle, Venmo, PayPal, your bank. There's all kinds of ways. I get it. You don't want it to be controlled by a centralized organization. But when the money disappears from crypto, there's no central organization to help you get it back. The crypto rules can be changed by a vote for most tokens, or for many tokens, I'll say, because I don't know if it's most, for many tokens. But anyway, a couple of weeks ago, FTX, which was the second largest crypto exchange, I think it's behind Binance, and its chief operating officer, the owner, apparently it was worth 12, 15, 18 billion dollars. It doesn't really matter what it was worth, because we know what it's worth now, probably zero. It might even be worth less than zero, because they borrowed money, they took money from investors, and it just went poof. I mean, they bought houses, they bought cars, they bought trips, they bought naming rights to a stadium, they bought other crypto companies up. They spent every dollar that got invested without any real strategy, plan, agenda, no intentions on how they were going to survive long term, just what can they do now, all underpinned by the fantasy that cryptocurrency is just inevitably going to go up. It's kind of like when a mega church does an expansion and they have only half the money to start. They just have faith that the money is going to show up. Again, I've talked about it a little bit in the past, but the one thing, and people are saying it less now, that drives me nuts is when they say something like, well, crypto is just like investing in stock. The prices can go up, the prices can go down. There's really no difference. When you say something like that, what it tells me is that you don't understand how crypto works, and you definitely don't understand how the stock market works. Yes, there are stocks that go poof, and there will be. I'm talking about the market, the system as a whole, for investments, for stocks. Generally speaking, the companies are trying to make money. They take in money, they sell shares, they sell bonds, and their goal is to use that money to create something that's more valuable than all of the money that went into it, and something that can be sold for a higher price when it comes out the other side of the factory, or a service where they can charge customers more than it costs them to perform that service. That's the goal, and all of that is generally public, at least for a company that's publicly traded. You can have privately traded companies or family-owned or individually owned companies like, let's say, Twitter, where its value can go up and down, and we don't know because it's not traded. But anything that's publicly traded, anything that you are generally going to be buying, has to follow rules. And there's a long history of creating the rules, the regulations that often people that want to buy cryptocurrencies don't want to have. Well, if you have no regulations, you see what happens. You can have incredibly huge swings in valuation. It's purely supply and demand. And so far, no one has ever been able to explain to me why Bitcoin should be $20,000 instead of $18,000. Why? Now, you can make an argument for a stock. You can make an argument for the market. You can say the market is overpriced, and you can cite some mathematical calculations that one can perform to say it's too high. You can also say it's too low. You can do that for individual stock. You can have a genuine and honest disagreement about what the right price is, but we're all talking about the same thing. We're just looking at different metrics to measuring that. With the cryptocurrency, Dogecoin, is it worth 6 cents or 84 cents? Is it worth $3 or is it worth 0? No price is based on anything other than mere speculation and supply and demand, all wrapped in this thing. I don't know. I heard someone phrase an unintentional Ponzi scheme supplied by the same people that confirmed that the emperor's new clothes were indeed beautiful, because only the smart people get cryptocurrency. So, I mean, so many warning signs. Anyway, FTX went bankrupt, and now several other exchanges that are related and or unrelated directly to FTX have either halted withdrawals or actually gone bankrupt, filed for bankruptcy. It's kind of like a slow motion collapse that I figured would just poof one day, it would all go away. But there are people that have very serious and big financial interests in this thing continuing long enough for them to get their money out. So it's probably not going to go away soon. And my recommendation is, as it always has been, ever since I dug enough to understand the basics of it, don't put your money there. It can get stolen from an exchange. It can get stolen on the bridge between one place and another. The exchange could steal it from you, like FTX, where they just took all the investors' money and spent it. When FTX was closing down, they got robbed, apparently, allegedly, online. Was it somebody inside? Was it embezzlement? Or was it just straight up theft? We don't know. The money's gone. It's not going to come back. You could put it on your own drive on your computer, or a drive that's not connected to your computer, and keep it in what they call cold storage, so it's safe and secure. But there may be no rescue for you if you lose that drive, whether it's a jump drive, thumb drive, hard drive, internal hard drive, solid state drive. If you lose it, you could literally lose hundreds of thousands of value, at least now, while it's still technically worth something according to other traders. Those that follow me on Facebook saw that as a joke, okay, everybody, in advance, a complete joke, I launched Philcoin, and Philcoin was $20,000 a coin, and you can easily trade it on the Phil exchange. Caution, prices may be very volatile. I did post a photograph of a penny, a U.S. currency, U.S. coin, a penny, as a physical representation of the actual Philcoin, because it is a cryptocurrency and doesn't have a physical medium, just like you always see in news stories, people have pictures of Bitcoins and Ether and Litecoins and Dogecoins. Those are just mock-ups to show you a coin, I guess, to further the idea that there is something there. Same thing with my, again, joke, sarcasm, irony, whatever you want to call it. The same thing with Philcoin, $20,000 a coin. And of course, the price went up to $22,000 because I bought a Philcoin from myself for $22,000. So the last trade in the unregulated crypto exchange called PhilExchange that only functions to exchange Philcoins, there has now been a transaction at $22,000. And I think after I get done recording this, I am going to make another transaction where I'm going to buy one from myself for $24,000. And therefore, the Philcoin is up 20% in just a couple of weeks. All joking aside, my sincere and profound recommendation, if you own any cryptocurrency, get out while you can, if you can, and do something else with the money. Buy a gelato. I don't care what you do with it. And people have accused me I'm doing this because the price is going down. Well, they obviously haven't followed me because I did this all while the price was going up. So up or down, I don't care. Crypto is not a way to long-term wealth for the average investor. Are there people that accidentally buy something when it's really low and then sell it when it's really high? Sure. Are there people that put dollars in the slot machines and walk away with $1 million? Yes, there are. Are there people that go to the racetrack and bet on horses or whatever else you can bet on and make money? Yes, there are. But the average person that goes to a casino, the average person that goes to a racetrack, and I will say the average person that puts money into cryptocurrency is going to walk away with less money than when they started. Thank you again for listening. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, if you like the show, you can go give a 5-star review or tell a friend. Tell a friend to listen to the show. Share the show far and wide for my potentially really, really boring investment advice of how to get wealthy in the long run. This is not a get rich quick style or philosophy, but it pretty much works. And that's what I want. In high school and college, I started to learn things about investing, and it just fascinated the fuck out of me. How can someone make money without physical labor? How does that happen? How do you make money from money itself? Now, the biggest single problem most people have, and I've not been the best at it, but the big problem that you have to have is to make money from money, you have to have money. So you have to do what it takes to get money. I don't know. Cut your expenses. Don't buy new things. Don't lease cars. Get a very small apartment. Buy a very small house. Keep your taxes low. Work a second job. Work a third job. Whatever you have to do, find a job that you can do or learn a skill that you can then use to get a job that not everybody else can do. And for most of my life, at least since I was 16, I had one and often two, and for probably 2 to 3 decades, 3 jobs. I had my regular day job with the man, and for a long time I had Polaris Financial Planning Small, and for 25 years I also had my DJ business doing weddings. So I would work all week and then work most Saturdays at a wedding, and then nights and weekends when I didn't have a wedding or on Sundays working on my business. So yeah, I worked a lot. You don't have to do it that way, but hopefully there are options for you to climb and crawl and scrape your way out of not having money. So another thing that's coming up in January of 2023, January 15th, I will be dusting off and updating and giving my presentation, which has the name Breaking the Cycle, How to Help Kids Out of Religion. And I've given this talk several times over the years at many different locations. This time I will be in Florida at the Central Florida Free Thought Community. I think that's the name, CFFC, because I now have a house outside of Orlando. I have been very kindly invited to give this presentation, and this presentation will help you prepare your children into a world of not being religious. It can be your kids, but I take it further. I say it can be your kids' friends, your friends' kids, your nieces, nephews, grandchildren, neighborhood kid friends. And I talk about the ideas, the strategies, the philosophies about how you can do that, and quite frankly, why you should do that. And when I very first gave this presentation many years ago, there was literal gasps in the audience, even from atheist audiences, because the very idea that you might approach a child and try to help them out of religion, especially if that child wasn't yours, but even if it was yours, was socially completely unacceptable. I want to change the very foundation of that, because I'm telling you, I've been there, I've seen it. The religious organizations are coming for your kids, for your grandkids, for your neighbor kids. There's always some goofy nutball that has crazy ass ideas about how the world works and wants to teach that shit to your kids. So you need to arm yourself with the ideas and stuff that are presented in that presentation. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, I wonder, once I get it finished, if I could kind of do the presentation here on the podcast. You wouldn't be able to see the slides from the PowerPoint that I have, but I think you would get the gist of it. So let me know if you're interested in hearing that. Maybe I can present it here in one of the future episodes of the podcast. But that's January 15th in the Orlando, Central Florida area. Of course, when Easter rolls around, I will be going to the American Atheist Convention, which is, generally speaking, every year for the Easter weekend. I don't even know the exact dates for that yet. I'll have to look those up, but I will be there. If you know of or are planning a conference or something that I haven't talked about and you'd like more people to know, I do invite you to contact me, and I can either mention the show or mention the conference, or possibly, not guarantee it, but possibly do a quick interview with you to talk about the conference and where it is and who's going to be there and all the fun stuff. I'd like for anyone in particular who's doing a medium or a small conference somewhere, or even a weekend get together with just a couple of speakers, because not everybody can swing the funds to go to some place like San Antonio. And I went there for the FFRF conference. That is an expensive city. It's one of those places that, you get a drink for $20, at least I do. I get a drink for $20, and then I realize that's the only drink I'm getting. So I'm just not going to pay $20 for drinks. Maybe that's just me being stingy, but that's the way I roll. But, conferences sometimes can be local or weekend events, or if you have a group that you want more people to know about, let me know and I can talk about that here on the podcast. So I'm going to wrap that up for now, and I'm going to get ready actually to fly down to Florida for a couple of weeks, back to Chicago for Christmas, and then by New Year's, back in Florida, and perhaps for 3 to 5 months continuously, and avoiding the -10, -20, -30 or lower temperatures of the northern Midwest. I hope to see you soon at a conference or a meeting out there somewhere. Until then, ciao.